So we will go through the first point is the most critical compliance item in your particular industry, in your company, which is reflecting the industry, I guess, each of you guys. Then we talk about a particular scenario of a risk profile, a risk example. So if we have a teacher in the school, for some reason their working with children check is not valid for a period of a week or something, and we could be fined or something like that. A real example of why compliance is important, a real scenario of a risk situation from each person. And it would be interesting to get an example of a particular compliance where it requires actually physically that person to be somewhere. For example, a drug and alcohol test or something like that, especially in the building industry. Is that right, Michelle? You do require these to be people to be tested before they go on the site sometimes, or if you can speak to that, that would be really good.
Yeah.
So
well, we don't normally do the drug and alcohol testing, but we can talk to maybe something else.
Okay, something like that. That requires that person like health check or something like that, physically to go see a doctor or something. Cool.
We don't actually do that, but maybe someone else does.
Okay.
We do we have to do in-person anaphylaxis training, so that if we've got any students that are anaphylactic, we've got staff that have to be trained in person how to deal with that.
But even the isn't it the what's these other trainings, the first aid certificate and stuff, isn't that in-person training courses as well? Yeah, here you go. Very, very cool. And other than that, we talk about the solution. Sally is the particular user on the platform who's now got the most experience, because she's implementing the compliance module, not only through the onboarding, but also for existing employees. She's in the process of finalizing that. So we'll bring Sally to maybe talk about that, but I'm going to talk about the solution, do the demo, and then we'll go to the draw. That's it. Even when we're doing a demo and stuff, I might bring you in just for some feedback. How does that sound to you, Michelle? Would that be useful? Does it make sense for your industry? That kind of thing. And just say it as it is. There's no hesitation, as it is.
How many people do you think will log on, Anwar?
I don't know. I'm expecting we normally do a better job of getting a couple of hundred people to register, but you don't get more than 50 people actually turning up no matter what. So I think we got the registration up to about 80. Is that right, Ed? 80 registrations. So if we can get 30 to 40, I'll be pretty happy. But I was really hoping we could do better. We've just been very busy to really, do better at the marketing of it. But yeah.
Everyone's so busy, hey, this time of year as well.
I think so. Yeah. So, Eddie, how can I see who's on and all this right now? Sorry, bud. Okay. So have you sent the final reminder? Okay. But isn't it unusual? What time is it, bud, now? It's 10:59. Normally we have 10, 15 people by now. Okay. But I mean, who's on? No one on is on at the moment. Is that the list? Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm looking at the right-hand side and it says only Anwar or something. Okay, very good. Hey, welcome everyone. I'm sorry I didn't, we're using a new technology and normally I can see as people coming in. And so thanks for joining us, guys. Welcome to the Martian webinars. I'm not sure whether you're a user or not. We've invited actually a lot of companies who aren't users to the webinar, but probably 80% maybe would be users of the audience. So regardless, welcome to the Martian Webinar Series. As you know, today we're going to be talking about employee compliance. We're going to be talking to 3 people from 3 different industries about their experiences, about what compliance means for them, what are the most critical compliance items for them as far as employee compliance. And we're going to talk about a particular risk profile, an example that they can share with us about, look, what kind of risk could result from a failure in a particular compliance. So therefore, just to get to understand really the importance of compliance from an HR perspective, from a company's perspective. And then we're going to talk about, to get into some of those very interesting compliances where a person is not just required to just upload a document or provide an evidence of a date or something, whereby they have to physically perhaps, to go and see someone to do a drug and alcohol test or something, or something invasive like that, in a sense, in the sense that it really takes your time and you need to be somewhere to provide that kind of evidence, just to open our eyes about the type of compliance that's out there. And after that, we're going to jump into the kind of solution that is required to really encompass all the different types of requirements from the compliance point of view, because that's the interesting thing that I want to really talk about. There's a difference between what institution or what vendor or what's the mechanism for a person to acquire the particular compliance, to have that document, for example. So in the case of a police check, we know there's a different vendors, including us, who will help you to acquire the police check evidence. But there's so many different compliances out there in different industries that require different sources, different institutions, and therefore the solution, bringing all of those under the same radar, is a different story. You don't necessarily have to be, that solution doesn't have to be generating all of those, regardless to the sources and the institutions that generate them. You need to be able to bring all of them under the same radar, speak the same language. So you've got to normalize the complexity, no matter what the item is, no matter who will generate it, how much it's going to cost, if any, etc. All the different complexities and the nuances of that particular item. You need a solution that normalizes all that under the same thing. At the end of the day, this is the compliance. When does it need to renew? What kind of risk, thing is to it? When does it become expire? And it should come under the same radar, and it needs to pop up on your radar when it becomes close to being expiring. That's the kind of solution that we want to talk about. And don't forget the lucky draw as well that we're going to be doing at 10 to 12. So without further ado, let's get going. Do we have Natasha on the call yet? Okay. No, a problem. We've got the awesome Sally. Sally, would you like to introduce yourself? We'll start with the panel. What do you do? Where you're from? What organization you're from?
Yep. So my name is Sal. I'm from Plenty Valley Christian College. I'm the HR manager. So that's a K-12 college in outer northeast Melbourne.
Fantastic. Thank you for jumping on, Sal, and helping out with this. Michelle?
Hi everyone, I'm Michelle. So I'm from Bay Building Group, so director and executive manager over the people space, so people, customer, and transformation.
Excellent. So brilliant. So we've got a private school, and would you call, Sal, is your school, would you call it private or independent? What's the proper name for it?
Independent college.
Independent college. Beautiful. And we've got a, would you call yourself a building, the industry, or the construction, or is that the same?
Private building and construction.
Fantastic. So the first point on the agenda is for each of you guys in no particular order. Maybe we start with Sal to share some examples. What would be for you as an independent college in Australia? What is the number one most critical compliance item that all your employees, or most of your employees, require to have?
All employees are absolutely required to have some form of working with children or teaching registration. So teaching registration will cover the teaching staff, and for all non-teaching staff, we hold working with children's registration.
Okay, but the teaching staff also require the working with children check too, as well,
no,
correct?
The registration includes all of the same checks that a working with children's check will do. So the VIT registration will negate the need for a working with children's check.
Okay. For those who aren't in your industry, what's a working with children check? Is that similar to a police check? Is it?
It's a police check that doesn't cover every kind of crime, but it checks if there's ever been any allegation, investigation, conviction against somebody that would raise red flags when they're working with minors.
Okay, fantastic. And this particular compliance, who issues that? Is that federal government level? Is that state government? Who's the issuer of that?
Yep, the state government issued.
Okay. Okay. Fantastic. And what typically does it have an expiry date, or how does it work? What's
It
the
does. So for
policy?
teaching staff, they renew their registration every year because that also makes sure that their qualifications and certifications are valid and their professional learning is constantly updated. And for working with Children's Check, that's every 5 years that's
Okay.
renewed.
Okay. And the renewal on the Working with Children check, does it actually come with an expiry date, or is
It
it,
does.
it's a
It,
policy? It is. It comes with
yep.
an expiry date. And you adhere to that. You don't require it to be any fresher than that. You're saying it's fine. Whatever the state says it's valid for 5 years, then we'll stick to that. We'll accept that.
We do regular checks to make sure that nobody is in breach of that we would be alerted if somebody's their registration was revoked in any way.
Yeah.
But we also do additional checks on top of that to make sure all our staff are compliant.
Brilliant. That's one of the features that Sally and I talked about. If we can, during those 5 years, if we can be connected via some kind of API with the relevant state government for us to be notified if any of those licenses were revoked, to notify the school. That's one of the features that we are considering working on as soon as we can. All right, thank you, Sal. We'll jump to Michelle. Michelle, in the in Australia, in the private, as you put it, building and construction industry, what would you say the number one most critical compliance that, let's forget the guys that work in the head office. Let's focus it more on the people that work on the site.
Yep, a good question, Anwar. So, say for us, we've probably got about 50 or 60% of our staff are site facing. And so the requirement would be around construction induction cards, first aid, the driver's license, because they're obviously driving between sites. And as Sal pointed out, we also have the need for the workers with children's checks as well. So some of those things have expiry dates on them and some of them don't. But as you were talking about, we would like to have a date in there where we would review it, even if it wasn't the expiry date. So a self-assessment date, I guess.
Got it. That's interesting. That's working with children's check for a construction worker. What is that all about? Do you mind explaining that?
Yeah, so for us, and we're a little bit different than a traditional like tier 1 or tier 2 construction company. So in what we do, we're going into people's homes. So we could be repairing a house and someone so it's an added checks and balances for that.
Yeah. Not all the time building from scratch. Sometimes you're doing maintenance work or whatever. I see what you mean. Okay, renovations, so to speak.
Exactly.
Beautiful. Okay, makes perfect sense. Okay, thanks for that, Michelle. And let's now go back to Sal and go through the second tier of the questions or experiences, if you like. To go back to remind people, Sal is from an independent college in Victoria. What would be, if you can share with us a scenario of a risk to put all this in context? Why are we going through all this hassle of compliance management? Why do we do it? Meaning, what's the risk profile for an organization? So for you guys, an independent college in Victoria, let's take the example of a worker with children check or the teacher registration. If an employee, for some reason, this particular registration, the teacher registration that you mentioned, slipped through the cracks, and this teacher, even by accident, they did not even realize they have to do it. They weren't reminded, you weren't reminded. So it's completely innocent for this matter. We're not talking about we have a villain here, God forbid, yeah? By accident, slipped through the cracks by 3 months. So what kind of risk does that, imply for the business, for your college?
So I don't think we'd come across that scenario very often because we do make sure everyone is current, because in our industry, the biggest worry that we have is we've got people's children in our care all day, every day, and we don't want to ever come across it. It would be the worst nightmare of any education facility to discover that we had somebody that had ill intent towards children, particularly because we do have an early childhood centre on site. So yeah, it would be the biggest nightmare we could encounter to discover one of the children in our care. was in a vulnerable position with somebody that shouldn't be there. So compliance is absolutely vital.
So let's even say nothing bad happened. I'm not saying, as I said, imagine it's just a mistake. And this is why, for example, Sal, you are using our platform. That's just why you like the idea, to make sure you've got that one radar that's going to notify you and bring it to your attention even before it becomes close to expiring, let alone when it expires. So therefore, what I'm trying to say is, let's imagine for some reason something slipped through the cracks, and that there was some kind of audit or something, I don't know. And then the government realizes, oh, you've got this teacher who's been working on site for the last 3 months and they don't have working with children share. Is there a fine or something, can you share with us? So I'm not even suggesting something bad happened at all.
Yeah. So if we moved away from, say, the idea of the working with children's or the VIT, one of the things that we do have is mandatory reporting, and all of us, every staff member needs to update our mandatory reporting training every year. So if somebody did happen to go a few months without mandatory reporting, it's not the end of the world in that they've still got VIT registration when they're in front of children. But if they came across a circumstance where they needed to use that training or those skills that are provided in the mandatory reporting course, if they're a few months out, then they would be behind in what skills or where to go, what avenues to take. So we like to keep them all compliant so that they're all equipped to be able to deal with whatever could come across their path.
Okay. So the real risk, therefore, would be, God forbid, if something bad happened. And
it may not be within the school grounds. It may be anywhere in a minor's mind.
And yet there's investigation, and then they realize, oh, they weren't even compliant. That's when you become really liable, and that's when it's a disaster from the school's point of view, from the risk profile point of view.
We work very hard to keep it from not quite reaching that disaster level. But that's where Martian Logic...
I'm so sorry. I'll move on.
No, that's where this compliance module is an incredible addition to our toolbox, to be able to make sure we are on top of it without it being as labour intensive.
Of course, absolutely. Michelle, is there an example that you can share? Thank you, Sal. An example that you can share also to highlight the kind of risk, a scenario that you can take us through, and what it would mean, the cost to your business or the negative impact on the business.
Yeah, sure. So say, for example, with the construction induction cards, that's something like what Sally was saying. We try to have all that in check, so we don't really get into the situation where we'll be talking about fines and so on. That's why the systems are so important. But say there was a safety incident on site, so there was an injury or what have you, which was reportable, then all of those documents would be a part of the reports that we would do. If we were in breach there, we could have... I don't know exact figures, but circa $20,000 fine. And I guess the most important part it would open us up to be audited, and you could check if there was a systemic issue where we didn't have those licenses recorded for our staff, then it would be a bigger problem and bigger fines. So I think that's the thing to note, is there's one-off things for us, but then there's also the pattern of behaviour, and if you've got a not getting done, that's probably the bigger risk. And then from a risk or a fines point of view, I guess it's not just money and the fines that are the problem, it's the reputational damage that's probably a big issue for us too. So it's the effect on our brand, and what happens even if a customer in one of the homes said to us, oh, do you have your construction induction card, or do you have first aid? And they say, oh, no, I don't do that. Then that's the negative effect as well. It's not just the fines, it's the reputation.
And that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. Thank you both for that. Okay, so now we've gone through the few examples. An example of a test, I'm not sure if we've gone through that, but what example do you guys have of from the compliance requirements for each of you guys, where the compliance is, for example, like a drug and alcohol test or a medical test, a check, or where that person, the employee, has to physically go somewhere to be able to and do something, to be physically in presence, to acquire this certification, as opposed to maybe it can be done online you and the computer doing things, filling out questions, and you pass the test, and then here's the evidence of it, and it's all done. Is there any examples that you can share? It's no big deal if you don't have any, but yeah.
So at our college, we have first aid training and anaphylaxis training for all staff. So a lot of the pre-work can be done online, but there's absolutely for CPR, for anaphylaxis, there are definitely in-person modules that need to be completed.
Okay, that makes sense. Like first aid certificate, they go through, someone, an expert comes into the class, you have 10, 15 teachers all lined up, and for that time, but an hour or so, they go through it. And and
for all new staff, for anaphylaxis training, to make sure that they are compliant if they're going to be anywhere near students, they do the online component, but within 30 days they have to do an in-person component as well. And so it's great to be able to keep an eye on whether or not that part has been ticked off too.
I've even heard a lot of special courses from the teacher's point of view, like allergies and things like that as well. Can you speak to that as well? Is there also some nuances to those?
So that's where we do the anaphylaxis training, so that if they do have an allergy that they are anaphylactically allergic to, it could be any staff member on site has been trained.
That's amazing. That's really good. Michelle, any example you can share?
So much like Sal, we have the first aid as well. So people go off site to complete the first aid. And then another example is elevated work platforms training. So this is working at heights. So that's on site elsewhere. And then obviously they get the ticket from that, and then we have to record that.
That's interesting. Oh my goodness, that's really interesting. Not many people know about something like this, Michelle. That
different things they have to do, but it's the same amount of administration and recording and everything. We all have the same issues in that regard, I guess.
That's awesome. Okay, how about if we go to the audience before we go into the next part of the agenda? Thank you both, Sally and Michelle. From the audience point of view, Eddie, how do I read the comments? Okay, so audience, if you have anything that you would like to share from your specific industry that you feel it can be enlightening, a bit different, unique about your industry from the compliance point of view, we would love to hear stories like that. Or if you have any questions so far about what Michelle or Sally shared with us, but any examples you can share about your particular compliance requirements that you believe are fairly unique to your industry, I would love to hear some stories there. Otherwise, we can move on. If everybody's happy, we can move on to the next part of the agenda. Where do we see those comments, Eddie? Okay, so we've got something now. Is that right? Oh, here you go. It pops up there. Well done, Ed. That's pretty cool. No question, but great discussion. Thank you. You're absolutely welcome. Thank you for the feedback. That's awesome. Okay, so let's then move on to the next. Sorry, Ed. We've got something here. We are an independent school, so same as Cell with requirements. Thank you so much for the feedback. Is that Christy? Christy, yep. We've got a new technology. I've got a big screen that I'm looking at, and yet I can read it because the way Eddie set it up, it comes up really big on the screen, those comments. So we have some training that has variable expiry dates. First-time staff have 12 months duration, and when it goes to 3 years, and then it goes to 3 years before it expires. Is that what it says? So it's not you can't set it up from the very beginning to be just repeating after 12 months or after 3 years. It's a very interesting situation. I really like that. Thank you so much for sharing. Is that Liz? Yeah. We need to make sure that we can cater for that in our platform. I don't know if we can do that or not, but nevertheless, I'm sure we can do it. But that's interesting, isn't it, Sal and Michelle? Like either of you, probably you don't have a requirement like that, right? That's really new. Would you agree with that?
Agree, yeah.
Yeah. So a new staff it needs to happen after 12 months, but ongoing after that becomes every 3 years. Liz, did I butcher this or this is what you meant? Eddie, it comes up in large on the screen, but then it evaporates, it disappears. Can we control how long it stays on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll let you know to move to the next one if you don't mind. We're having a bit of a technical discussion here, a bit of a team fight. So put up with us for a minute. Correct, and each state can be different too. Amazing. Okay. That's very, very interesting, Liz. I really appreciate you sharing this. This is exactly the kind of things I wanted to hear from this. We've launched our platform now. The new feature, the compliance management, in the last sort of only couple of months. So I'm really keen as part of the discussion for me to learn. This is not just about me preaching and stuff. That's why I'm bringing, professionals in a raw manner, get them to speak about their requirements. So this is what exactly this is all about. Thank you, Liz. I've got also something from Catherine that I did not read. That. Are you able to go back to it, Eddie, please? Sorry. Oh, okay. I think Eddie is saying there was some technical issue on her end. That's what she was talking about, Catherine. So that's cool. Anything else? Anybody can share any other requirement, like Liz's, for example, something that you feel is unique or different about your industry? That would be really, really cool. How are we going with the time? 23 past. I think we're going to have to move to the next part of the agenda anyway. But guys, by any means, if you still want to share anything, we will definitely put it up and read it regardless. Okay, we've got something from Christy. What is that? We do use, Eddie, can you put this up? Thank you, Ed. We do use contractors, so we do have extra requirements for them. Do you mind sharing what that means, Christy? What kind of an example when you say extra requirements? Things like public liability licenses. Okay, correct me on that, Christy. We don't really care whether it's a contractor or not. Sorry, bear with me for a minute while I say that. We don't really care. I know the word. Probably I could have used better words. But what I meant by that, our platform is really agnostic from that point of view. We can manage even volunteers, let alone external contractors or employees. I'm not sure if you're a user of the platform. I'm sorry, Christy. Forgive me if I should recognize you, and I'm not, because all I can see is Christy. But if you're one of our clients, then, when you're in the engagement field, you can choose whether this person you're engaging with, that's why we use the word engagement, to make sure it's very high level, because they might be employees, they might be external contractors, or they might be volunteers. And so, you should be able to manage all of those. And therefore, the compliance, just another compliance item. It's very, very flexible. Call it whatever you want to call it. Set up the kind of dates, the kind of pattern, what kind of requirements does it require when person is interacting with it, the different fields, and the reminder system. So that's how we can bring it under that same radar as I was talking about before. Kara Christian School. Now I know who you are. Nice to see you or to talk to you again, Christy. Thank you for the feedback. Does that make sense, the reply that I had before, or?
I think it makes good sense to me. And as a construction company, we have, like, say, 200, 300 staff, so employees, but then from our trades and subcontractors, like what Christy's talking about, could be, 3,000 of those companies plus all their workers. And so for us, we have to keep track of those things, like she's talking about public liability license, maybe specific licensing if they're an electrician or so on. So that's a whole level different requirements compared to from the traditional point of view, we're looking at employees. So two different groups of stakeholders, I guess.
But I just want to acknowledge that you might agree, both of you, now that I understand that Christy is a client. The idea is you can bring it still under the same system, no matter whether it's an employee or a contractor.
Yeah.
And actually, Christy, really thank you for sharing, because that's a really interesting point. I remember I did some contracting when I was an IT professional before I started Martian Logic. And we used to have all these things that we have to provide before we could even start on the job, because we're a separate ABN, and I had to have all these current documentations and insurances and public liability insurance, etc. Yeah, makes perfect sense. Thanks for the reminder. Brilliant. Okay, let's move on to the next part of this and take a look at the Martian Logic Compliance Module and talk, not just a demo. It's not just about the features and how it looks in our platform. It's more also about the architectural solution. So it's really a learning experience for all of us about what should a solution of this nature do. So we're just using the Martian as an example, although as a CEO of the company, I'm definitely the biggest cheerleader of the product, but really it's really not about selling the product only. I want it to be a genuine, intelligent conversation about the solution more than just the product. Eddie, how do we do that? Do I have a laptop to use or? Thanks, mate. So bear with us for just a minute, guys. Here we are. Okay, Eddie, can you drive? Can I ask you where, or do you want me to drive? Okay. The problem with this is when I've got a laptop that I have to use, I end up having to be looking down. It's like we need to prop it up a little bit like that. Maybe that solves the problem. If we can have, anyways, it's all good. Thank you, Ed. Appreciate you, mate. So, what I want to show you here, and again, speaking about the solution, really what's interesting about this is what I had said before multiple times now, and in the invitation to this webinar, I keep emphasizing on the fact that this is not about us being the central focal point where all your compliance are going to be generated. It's never about that. It's never, ever going to be about that. We could more and more integrate our compliance with the actual source to be hopefully generating or streamlining things. So I'll give you an example. Police check. We have a lot of clients that use police check. Almost every one of our clients use police check for at least some part of their employees, right? Almost every client. We do have a police check product, as we are a certified provider by the federal government, by ACIC, to provide the police check, and we automate it beautifully from the platform. But you don't have to use our police check service for you to be able to manage your police check requirements in here. So you can create a police check item in this library. As you can see, this is my library in here, and I've got a police check item in here. That's the one that you can see at the top, the Nationally Coordinated Criminal History Check. That's the exact name of the product. And so regardless to where that, what's the mechanism of collecting this particular police check for the particular employee, whether through us, through another vendor, or you do it yourself manually by going to the federal government's website and pay your $27 or whatever it is to do it, it doesn't really matter. As long as you bring it back in here and that date and expiry date and the expiry policy, so to speak, is accurate, then it's going to go under this umbrella here. So there are two different things. Whether we continue to do more and more for us to be a collection point for those items has nothing to do with what this product is all about. This product is about bringing everything under the one umbrella, regardless to what the source and the mechanism of getting that particular item into here. So how does the solution work? Now that I talked about the architecture and made the distinction between how you collect and how you get that particular certification versus how you want to manage it. You in the system, you go to your library, so it starts really, and you enter all the different items in your business. Let's say on average per each company, there's maybe about 8 from what I've learned from the users. I know some industries got maybe 25, some industries about 5. It averages, let's say, about 8 or 10. So that's what you see in here, about 8 or 10. For every item, you can see these, they say live because it could be, initially in draft, etc., until you agree with what the item requirements, etc. You make it live, and then you start to include it, because remember, as I mentioned in the invite, there's 2 sort of funnel, I guess, or aspect to compliance, or to make sure all employees are compliant. The new folks that are coming in through the recruitment and onboarding funnel, you need to make sure they are compliant, but also clearly the current employees to make sure they remain compliant, in other words, compliant all time. That's the 2 aspect of, once you've offboarded someone, that will all end, and there's no issues there. You don't need to worry about whether they're compliant or not. So therefore, it's really the 2 streams. The first one is the funnel of the recruitment and onboarding of new employees coming into your business to make sure before they step foot in your business, they are compliant. And that's what we will talk about in a minute. And the current employees, meaning if we speak about that stream, from the moment they start or the moment after they start, they remain compliant. So not only that you've made sure they have everything they require to have, those items remain compliant, and that's where the dashboarding and the notification system will help with that or ensure that. So in the library here, as you can see, these items have been assigned to employees, existing employees, but also they are part of the onboarding funnel. So this is giving me a summary here of how many people in total this item is assigned to, and what's the breakdown of the statuses. Green for us is it has more than 30 days to expire, and orange is it's within 30 days but hasn't expired yet, and red, that means it's gone over the expiry date, it has expired. I've got something in the chat, Ed. Is that something I should be? Okay, cool. Sorry. So that's what this is telling me here immediately when I go to my library. So as I said, how it starts is you create the item, and then you do two things. You assign the items to the employees that you need to assign it to, the current employees. You can do it via the roles. You can go to a particular role and say, people in this role, everybody in this role. I might have 10, 15 people. In this case, it's 0. I picked up the wrong role. I don't know if I could find maybe this. How many people I've got in this role? I've got 4 people in this role here, as it says. And I want to assign, I link one or more of those items against the role. And it immediately tells me what's happening with those cohort of people, 4 people in this case, with every item. So this is really important because let's say we can give you a picture here if you want to present to the business how you've assigned, you've allocated the right compliance items for the right people in the different roles. So for the teachers, we need A, B, C, D. For the admin staff, in the college example that Sally shared with us, they require a slightly different set. I'm sure there's an overlap. There's perhaps certain items required by every employee, but different roles might require different requirements. I mean, that's really obvious. So when you do it from here, the first advantage when you assign it against a role is you can actually have a report that shows management, the business, here's our posture when it comes to compliance. You can see there, it's been now allocated that a teacher is going to require this, an IT person is required that, someone on site, on our construction sites is going to require these items, maybe our marketing folks and head office will require these items. So that in itself is useful, but also the reason it's useful in here is, let's just say there's a new requirement, the legislations, etc., that required, Michelle, in the construction industry to maybe we don't need this particular compliance anymore. And as a matter of fact, we need this instead now. So you come in here for those roles that require this item, and you add or remove the item, and you click on sync. And we're going to now, for those cohort of people in that role who don't have this item yet, we're going to send them the invitation to provide it. And it's going to come up on your radar as pending, and they're going to be notified, and it's just now in play. That's all you have to do. So it really, be able to manage it through the role, it's got a couple of advantages there. So now that you've assigned it to all the employees in different roles, let's talk about the onboarding funnel, the recruitment onboarding funnel. So the way we've designed this is really flexible. You can, if we go to pack templates, I've asked the team to place it for me in one of the packs. So if I go to any pack, if you're a user of the platform, you know what an onboarding pack is. So you can then, those items for that particular role that you've got a pack for that role, or for this sort of a group of roles, if you like, then in that pack, you create a form or multiple forms and just drop those items from the library in them. That's all you've got to do. It's super flexible. There's nothing special that you need to treat them. They're just collection points. You can put them all in one form or each in a separate form for this matter, and then put them in the pack. As long as you do that, as soon as they are completed by the person being onboarded, by the end of the onboarding process, when your onboarding pack is completed, they're going to come up on your radar immediately now. So what will happen is, first of all, they will appear under the compliance, under the all compliances here. what I call is the workbench. So in this workbench, it's showing you every item, not statistical like the dashboard that we will look at in a sec. This is every item. So for example, when they're submitted through the compliance, through your onboarding, they come up on your radar as submitted. So the admin folks, the HR folks can then go into them, review them, do whatever they need to do to validate, maybe go to some website and put some IDs and make sure this is accurate, whatever you need to do, validate it, and then you can then approve it. Then that's when it becomes green, which is like this, meaning approved. And this is immediately reflected all the time from the moment it's submitted, no matter what, it's reflected in your dashboard. So this is live to the second. You never have to update any of that data. You've got here what this dashboard is showing you here. For every item that you have, the length, the height of the item is how many people it's assigned to. And the breakdown of the colors of that height is also by how many are safe, more than 30 days valid, how many in that brown category within 30 days, and how many expired. There should be nothing in red, really. This is not what you want to see. That's my test account here. And there's also a breakdown for every item immediately you're going to have without you having to move a finger. You've got this separate chart in here for that item to showing you the full breakdown here as well. So that's what you get in the dashboard out of the box without any customization. So we discussed now, during the onboarding journey or funnel, how it's simply once you built the library, I've got this police check. Look, by the way, the police check, I'll show you, for example, if I was to be doing a police check, because almost everybody on this call, if you're in HR, you would understand the requirements for a police check. It's very, very big in this country. So just in terms of how you build those items, I want to build a new item called, let's say, police check. I choose a compliance field. I would have to have that custom field in here created for a police check. So I'm going to use something here. I don't want to have to build it. I'll just use, pretend this is your police check item. I'm going to call it here police check. You'll see why I'm going to show you this. I'll just put in here AK in case there's multiple. Then you go, okay, what's the compliance, the compliance expiry, if you like, policy here? You go, well, with the police check, the government doesn't put an expiry on it. So therefore, it's up to the organization, hence the industry requirements, the organizational requirements, the jurisdiction they're in, etc. What is an acceptable sort of police check, meaning sort of a currency, if you like, policy? Are we okay for it to be up to 12 months? Do we need it to be fresh and renewed every 12 months, every 2 years, every 3 years, whatever you like? So with the police check, we know that's the case. So we go, okay, it's not based on an expiry date because it doesn't have an expiry date. It only has an issue date. Then we choose, okay, specify the period that you want it to be, you want to be notified and therefore scrutinized on the basis of. You go, well, it's going to be 12 months. So I could put in here 12 months or 1 year, let's say. We can do it either way. 1 year. Sorry, where's the years there? Based on the issue date or based on a submit date. It doesn't make sense in this case. It has to be based on the issue date for a police check, and you create the item. So this is the item in here. You make it live and you start to use it. How to use it? You start to assign it to employees in bulk, one-on-one. You place it in your onboarding packs, place it via the roles. You add it to all the roles that the people require it and push that synchronization thing. So all these employees will get notification for them to be invited to complete it. And that's it. You start to see it, the radar changing. You start to see this in here, the colors changing as people start to interact with it. And of course, when I go to what I call the workbench in here, you start to see, this police check item has been submitted, right? So you would go in, just like as I mentioned with this, you would go in, view it, and make sure you do what you need to do. You might want to attach an evidence yourself, write comments, however you configure this item to be required, and you approve it when you want to approve it. You click on approve, and then it changes from being submitted to be approved. And all that as I said, from the moment it's submitted, it's really on your radar. I love to call this page your radar. It really pops up on your radar, right? It's between the dashboard and between this list in here. It's just really going to pop up on your radar. That's how we wanted that page to be, this multi-focal page, if you like. So that's really at high level. Maybe we didn't cover some parts of the system, but this is what we did. How about we take questions from the panel, from the audience, from everyone about some things that maybe you're not sure about, but also maybe some suggestions, some things that you feel we haven't done yet. It's just really a discussion. We have about 10 minutes on that, 15 minutes now to discuss any features, anything, any requirements, feedback, and then we're going to jump into the prize, and we will finish on time at 12 o'clock. So you've been an awesome audience already. Just don't forget we're doing the draw at about 5 to 12. Is that right, Ed? 5 to 12, we're going to do the draw, the $1,000 draw. So any feedback, any questions from anybody? We have a question, do we? Can we send expiry emails to employees and managers? Oh my goodness. I'm sorry. I forgot to explain that. So as part of the solution, as I mentioned in the invitation, 3 aspects of it is the key thing, is the radar that I talked about, the dashboard, the single dashboard for all your items, and the single automation system. Absolutely. So when you create the item, here's the item that we created before. I'll go back to it. I can click on this and go edit reminders. And with the reminder system, it's similar to what we have in the packs, very, very similar. You create the group. So by default, there's the candidate and the employee themselves are here. Then you can add for the candidate, for example, /employee. You can add as many reminders as you like, SMS or email, as many as you want. Then the same thing, you create another group. So if I cancel this, you create another group in here. I'm going to call this add user group from a library. Let me see if I've got what I've got in the library. Not really much. I'll just close this and go back to the reminders. I'll add a new group from scratch. Add a new group. I'm going to call it, let's say, HR. And in this group, I'll add the members to it. I'll go here to add 2 other members. So for example, I'm just adding these users, 1, 2, 3, 4 users, close. So this is the group now. And now I start to add reminders to the group. And this is how you've got tags based on the expiry date, based on the send date, all kind of tags available for you to set up these reminders. So if I put in here the 30 days reminders, the 30 days subject is 30 days reminder for your police check. And in here, I can say I want it to be 30 days before expiry date. As you can see, it's already locked based on that. And I can put in here, I've got tags. So from tags, I can get the anything you've been collecting is available for you. You can put even forms in here, form tags, or if I can go to the tags, and I can put in here the applicant first name, for example. So, hi, John. Your police check is about to expire in, this is for the 30 days. You can hard code it, or you can put in here, there's a number of days to expiry or the expiry date. You've got all these tags available for you to build the message you want to build it in either email or SMS. Does that answer your point? And Ed, we've got a couple of points. If I can go back to, where are we? Can you create multiple automated reminders? For example, absolutely. So what I've showed you here is the 30 days. Let's say, why couldn't I save this? Doesn't have a name. 30-day reminder. That's an internal name. Save it. And then for the same group for HR, for example, as opposed to the candidate, I can add another reminder. And that would be your 20 days. So if I put in here 20, and in here, I'm going to call it 20-day reminder, and hi, John, etc., and I'll save it. And you can see now multiple reminders for the same group, and you can add your own groups. So that's the employee themselves, managers, HR, any stakeholders that you want. And then you can add multiple reminders for that stakeholder based on the different variables. Does that make sense? I'm sorry, who was the person who asked the question? Yes, wonderful. Thank you. You're absolutely welcome. Thank you for the question. So any suggestions, anything that you guys feel that we're still missing here? can employees recomplete an expired absolutely item and submit for approval? So how it works is we have the employee self-service portal here. If I can log in as an employee, just give me a second. I think this would be this example here. If I log in as this employee, when you get those notifications, it drives you to the employee self-service. As an employee, that's the only items you'll be able to access, menu item I meant. And that's what you see. This is your employee self-service. That's the tab called compliance in here. And that's where you can come in, not only update something in orange that's close to expiry, even if it's green and you've got a new version, you can update any item. We never ever override the item. That item becomes, as soon as you've got a new submission for the same item, that item becomes historic. It's there forever, like until we delete your data. So from an auditing point of view, we never override anything that was done before. We create a brand new item for that submission and it becomes the current. So when I go back to HR, you'll see by default, when I go to my compliance, for example, in here to my workbench, by default it's showing you the current versions, but I can always come in here and show you the historic. So we never ever get rid of a compliance item because that's important for auditing purposes. So at any time the employee provide a new one, whether this is now coming to close to expiry or it's expired, or if it's completely green with 60 days to go, 100 days to go, they might want to do it then. They've got a new license or something. They can welcome to do it. The previous item, the current item becomes a historic one, untouched. We don't touch it. And the new one becomes the current one, and it becomes in a status, for example, being submitted. So HR can verify it. They go, cool, it's approved, and we go from there. Does that address your point? I'm sorry, I'm not sure who asked the question, but please give me feedback there. We've got another question here. Does that document appear on the employee profile with status after approval? Absolutely. So the employee, we showed you the employee self-service. When the employee logs in, they can see all their items. As an HR, which is who I am logged on now, admin, meaning manager, HR, etc., an admin person. Not only I've got the full view of all my people, of course, but in my employee database in here, we've got a whole tab for it. So any employee, I don't know if this person has got any compliance, but it doesn't matter. When we go here, we've got a brand new tab called compliance, and that will show you all the items that this person has. And the same thing, you can go and filter on the historic as well. So that's the full story for that person, as opposed to everybody in that same workbench. Absolutely, it's all fully integrated, baked within the platform, guys. Everywhere you expect it to be, it's either there or it's coming through as we develop it more and more. Can I get feedback on those questions, guys, that came through? That would be amazing. But I really appreciate the questions. They're all really good questions. Thank you both. The names, it's just, as I said, I'm a bit far from the screen. I can't see the names. But
just thinking, Anwar, when we manage compliance on all different things, we like to use percentages. So I think that's everybody on, how you know where you're tracking at a rate of things. So from a reporting point of view, from my view, like we look at the whole staffing group is at 95% or whatever, because we know that we have a gap if we're going under a certain rate. So in that initial dashboard, it might be good having percentages.
Absolutely. Let me just learn exactly what you mean, Michelle. It's interesting. So give me an example. So we're looking at...
Is that the first aid one, or on the second column? Like everybody's green, so I guess that's 100%. But if you just, instead of had the number like 15, it had 100%.
Absolutely, yeah, interesting.
The driver's one was like, I don't know if that's 30% in red and 70% in green.
So just question, between the red and the green, that's an easy one. We can give you the percentage, you can see that. And thank you for the idea, by the way. But how would you deal with this? You've got the brown and the red, and would you consider the brown okay, or you would give it sort of different weight when you're creating that percentage? How would you do it?
I guess if it's still accurate, it's still green, isn't it?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
or we could make it optional for you to provide a weight.
Yeah,
So that percentage, because it's in brown, it's not 100% green, but it's not red. We give it a different weight when we're providing. Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, I really like that, of course.
So we have a compliance built into a couple of different roles and responsibilities here, and so we've got a compliance officer who sits over our trade base, so subcontractors, as someone was saying in the questions before, and our employees, and so they work to like a 95% compliance rate. But 100 is perfect, right? Everyone knows that. So that's like one of their KPIs, I guess. And then from a business point of view, we get monthly and quarterly reporting. So a snapshot of this would come to me to say, okay, this is where we're sitting as a group. So it's just an idea.
That's a brilliant idea. I'm learning two things here from you, Michelle. Not only to provide the report with to provide a percentage view of the report, but also with the role, how we connect those which items are required for the role. Maybe you provide what's an acceptable percentage in that role. So we then show you that in context. So when we say you've got problems here, well, in that role, you might have a problem here because look, acceptable is 95 and you're at the moment at 88. That's a major problem. So that's another layer of this reporting. That's a great point. I really like that. Thank you, Michelle. If we don't need historical data of a compliance item, can we override the existing data by refilling the form? I'm just wondering, why do you have that requirement? Like, why does it worry you whether the historic is there or not? It doesn't get in your way at all. I must have misexplained to you the feature to why you're a bit worried about the historic. Or is the question really about the historic? You're saying, I don't want historic. It's bad for us. Like, do you mind unpacking that for me a little bit? Because as far as I'm concerned, I might be wrong, but it really doesn't get in your way. The historic is always there, but you don't need to worry about it. Or by default, we're not showing you any historic. You have to go out of your way to look at the historic only in the case of an audit, for example. So I'm not really sure why you'd be concerned about it, Abdullah. I don't believe it's going to be in your way. I hope that makes sense, mate. Any feedback, guys, about that? Michelle, would the historic be a good thing for you or a bad thing? Having that historic data, the previous, Oh, I think you're muted, Michelle. Something happened to your tech there.
Sorry, Anwar, that was me forgetting how to use a computer. I think for me, I like to see the history. So I would prefer not to override it, but to see the past if we need to.
Makes sense. Okay, thank you. We're on the same page. Yep, absolutely. So at any point, if you're a client and you're using it and you feel that historic is getting in your way, it would be really not by design. It would be a mistake. We certainly don't want it to be in your way. It's just under the hood. It's just happening. When you need it, you know that you're covered if there's an audit or something. So that's really the idea behind it. We would need the historic for auditing purposes. Exactly. But as I mentioned, you don't want it to be in your way. You want to know and trust it's going to be there. But from the experiences of that person, they don't care. They're just, here's my new license now. That's all they see. That's where it is. And from your point of view, that's the latest one. You don't want to worry about the historic one anymore now that you've got a new submission from this person. So we definitely do it that way.
I think if we view it, Anwar, through the eyes of, it's not just a ticket or a license that someone has, it's often knowledge and awareness. So if you've got the audit of that as well, you know that they've had a history of learning while they're getting their tickets as well. Like say, so first aid, they've had this over the course of the last 5 years. They've got the knowledge, right? Not just the tick box of having it. So sometimes if we look at compliance through that lens as well.
I don't think I got that point. I feel that it's an interesting point, but I missed it. Sorry, educate me a bit more about it. Michelle,
I like the history of it. So say if we've got a problem and we're talking to someone like they haven't dealt with the first aid issue as they should have, and then we only had their current history or their current record, you'd say, oh, you've only just done your first aid. But that's a different conversation if you've done it over the last 5 years, isn't it?
Okay. You take into history.
Yeah.
You take that into context when you're having a conversation.
Right.
Got it. Yeah, makes perfect sense.
My words, everybody. So sorry about that.
No. I'm sorry. I'm just not an HR person. I sometimes it takes me a little bit to get to understand what you guys are saying. Okay. Is there a history of the reminders being sent just in case someone says, I really love this point? I can certainly tell you there will be history. We do keep it, whether at the moment, I'll just double check we show you that or not, but I'll show you what I mean by that. Sorry, give me a sec, but I love the point, by the way. I agree, Liz. So if we go into, at the moment, I don't believe it's there, but I'll show you what I mean, what we can do, because we already have done it in the platform. So if I go to any pack that was sent and completed, which is we're using behind under the hood the same technology. So if I go to something completed here, view pack, this pack was completed, and the automations is similar, as you can see, to what we did with the compliance. You create a group, you have system groups like the candidate that's always there, the manager that's always there, what we call system groups. Few system groups, and you create your own, as you can see with a plus in here, and you set up automations against the same concept. We're using the same tech. So in here, under the automations, because this wasn't, it was test data, I show you. If I go to this automations here, it shows you the automations, but this is your history. That will show you every single little reminder. So let me find one that it's a bit better than that. Okay, so this has got certain automations in here. You can have multiple, as we discussed before, automations, SMS or emails, and this will be the history showing you, oh, here's an example. Every single reminder that was sent with full proof of whether it was delivered or not. We invested so much money, not to just say, oh, well, we tried to send an SMS. We actually required the SMS gateway provider to give us a confirmation that that was sent or delivered, etc. And we have it here for you as your evidence. Same with the emails. We work with a world-class gateway email provider so we can get the feedback from them. Not, oh, well, send an email for us. No, give us confirmation. What happened with that? Does that address your point? That's what you will see in the compliance. The same thing. It's the same tech. We can bring it across super quickly. That will be coming through. Eddie, are we up to date, bud? Okay. Are attachments mandatory in the compliance form? No. Let me talk to you about this, actually. That's a really interesting point. Thanks again for that great question. I didn't spend enough time on that point. So what is a compliance item, in other words? Let's talk about the different types. Actually, really, really powerful point. I would love to be able to explain, guys. So if I go back to my library, when I'm trying to create a new item in here, these are the different items. We're going to even zoom on this to make sure everybody can see that. You have a form. Now, that is, our forms are really powerful. There's about 30 different field types. You got your text and your multi-choice and tick box and single choice and compliance item and a date and a bank account, all these different field types, right? You build the form the way you want to build it. It's got even labels, meaning you can have text to explain things and blah, blah, blah. Go to this website and acquire, blah, blah, blah. And then when you got the thing, come back here and reattach it. You can build the form the way you want to build it. And that form, then as you're adding it to your library, same thing. We say, okay, what's going on with the expiry of the form? Oh, well, I need this form to be refreshed every year, or it's based on this particular field. I've got a date field in there, call it expiry date. I want that to be the date based on that, the expiry. Same thing. So this is now you're customizing what that is. However, we have a document. It could be maybe just a document, meaning that you want to attach some PDF, or it could be the compliance field that we talked about, which we will even talk about a little bit, how customizable that is, or it could be a video. You want to make sure that they, by the way, with the document, it's got the option to whether you want them to digitally sign it or just to say, acknowledge that I've read the document. Either way, just like with the packs. So that's how flexible what an item can be. And the video, same thing. I acknowledge that I've watched the video. It could be a training of some kind and a required item. And you can same thing say, I want that to be done every year, because maybe you update that content. And one of the features we want to do, if you update a content such as for a video or a document, what we want to do is we want to push that to everybody, say, guys, we've got a new version of this because God forbid COVID happened and now we have a more strict requirements for that video to be now, we've got a new version of it. Can you please make sure everybody now submits that item again? So that is also will be coming through. Did I address the original question, or I've gone on a tangent here? The question was, are I'll come to that point in one sec. The question was how flexible the compliance document is. In that compliance document here, which is really the compliance field, which is you don't have to use it, as I said, although we like to see it as a very important type. But as I said, you can build the form, even custom form yourself. Now, in the compliance field, very, very flexible. Let me explain to you what I mean by flexible. Just I want to navigate to it this way. If I go to my fields, sorry, I'm zooming. I'll go back to the normal screen. If I go to compliance here, if I'm adding, let's say, or I want to edit this field here, this is the compliance document field that the question was pertaining to. It's got all these features that you can turn on and off. You can decide what you want the employee to provide, whether it's an attachment or not. So to prove, to go back to see the upload file here, you can turn it on and off, or you can turn it on and say whether you want it to be mandatory or not. So you can remove it completely, or you can say, I want it to be there, but I want it to be non-mandatory, or I want it to be mandatory. So it's really, really flexible. Beautiful. You're welcome. But there was another question in the meantime, I think, from Liz, Eddie, if you go back to the previous point on that list, that I did not address. Can we generate a report on each question in the compliance document, like attachments, comments, and date, etc.? I really like that point. So, for example, just to see if I can explain that point, and please correct me on that. So when you go to compliance here, let's call this a report if you like for now. These columns in here, for example, we definitely intend to make that customizable to what other fields I want to surface here in my in this list, and clearly you'll be able to export it, etc. That's the kind of reports. I totally agree with that. Yes, that will be definitely coming through. And for example, Liz, the point that I made before with the form. Imagine you're building your own custom form to replace the compliance document. You don't like our compliance document that we had. It's not flexible enough. You don't have to use it. You build your own form, and in that form, you can have an attachment field. You can have a date field, multiple date fields, and you can decide what's mandatory, what's not. You can have dependencies. If they select this, then hide these fields and make that field become mandatory, etc. You use all the smarts that the form provides you with, and you'll be able to then, when you're doing the expiry policy, to say, this is my expiry date. I want it to be 12 months from this date, whatever that date is that you placed in there. That's how flexible the whole thing is, as opposed to using the compliance document. We thought the compliance document is cute, nimble, ready to go field that people will be attracted to, and it can cater for 80% of the requirements or whatever it might be, but certainly it's not the only choice there. And back to the point about surfacing all these different fields to report on, anything in that form will be exportable if it was the form, or every field in that compliance document that we have now, they will all be exportable, 100%. Can a manager assign their direct reports a compliance document? Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Any admin person that has got, or any user, it's a permission. So I'll explain. If I go to a particular employee, and I'll go to the compliance tab, it's showing me what this employee has, but it's got in here the assign item. So this is where I can pick anything from a library and assign it, whether it's mandatory or not, to that person. So this feature here is got a permission. So whether you want the managers that are able to access their own direct report, so that would be the bucket system that we have, which is the data segregation. So first of all, you'll have the bucket system that says, as a manager, when I come in, I can only access my own employees. So that's number one. Then number two, you use the permission system to say whether they can assign, whether to be honest, first to be able to go into the compliance at all tab, and when they are in the compliance, whether they can use this feature or not. That's how customizable it is. That's nothing new about the compliance. That's the general how we do things in the platform. Every feature follows that same pattern. It's what we call the access control, which has got two tiers to it. The data segregation, which records you can see. Once you're in that record, that you can see what aspects of it you can see, what tabs, what buttons, what things you can see and do. So that's everything. That's nothing special about the compliance. I hope I'm answering the point. You're welcome. How are we going for time? We still have 5 minutes before we do the prize. So with the prize, we're going to include the panel as well, Eddie, right? Yes, the panel and myself. Can you give me a priority? Like when you draw, it comes to me first, and I'll say if I want it or not. No, I'm joking, of course. The panel and the audience, whoever is still on the call, everybody that's on the call, including the panel, and let's do the draw. Guys, by any means, if there's any question, keep going. But Eddie just preparing the draw now. He's got some tool that he's going to share on the screen that does a random draw or something. So how does it work, Ed? Take us through it when you're ready. By the way, guys, just before we do that, the next thing that we're going to do, I'm really excited about, is the alpha version of the alpha is sort of before beta, meaning it's really raw, whereby if you were to want to play with it, we can't guarantee the data you use is going to be there because we might be making significant change where the data can be wiped out. But you can definitely play with it, interact with it. And that's the performance review. We're doing a session on Friday, tomorrow's Friday. I've invited a limited group of users to give us feedback on it. If anybody on the call, Sal, did I invite you to it? And Michelle? Okay. So if anybody on the call would like to jump on that tomorrow, please let us know now in the chat and I'll send you the invite. I've only wanted about 5 to 6 clients, just small feedback, and hopefully, lovely. So next week, Wednesday or Friday at the latest is where it becomes available. If somebody want to trial it, play with it, we will be able to give you the permission to play with it from about Wednesday next week, which is really, really exciting. And just at high level there, not only it sort of acts like, it can be like a survey in a sense where you're doing a bunch of different categories and you want to provide maybe for some of these categories a score system, and you can then send it to everybody in the company on a half-yearly basis, quarterly, yearly. That's one kind of types or use cases. But we're also doing the one-on-one between a manager and an employee for the purpose of maybe an improvement plan or whereby it's got the goal setting, in other words. So you'll be able to sit down when you're sitting down with the employee, you set the goals for the next meeting. And at that next meeting, you'll review the goals that were set, but also you set the goals for the next meeting, that kind of type. So it's really quite generic. We expect it to cater for about 75%, if not even more, of all the different reasons why you would do, or purposes, of a performance review. In any case, Eddie, what do you want me to do, bud, for the stop sharing? Yeah. All right, here we go. So with that $1,000, what you do, guys, is the winner will talk to the team and to their team, and then find a group activity, sort of for a team building activity, whatever it might be. It's a dinner in a restaurant, or it could be rock climbing in the Amazon. No, is it rocks in the Amazon, or is it flat with trees? Anyway, no matter what the activity is, and then once that is done, they can send us an invoice or whatever proof that they did this, and we will pay either the vendor directly or them the $1,000. So it's like a reimbursement of some kind of any activity, team building activity, the winner and their team will choose to do. Okay, we have a winner. So that was randomly selected via some technology that Eddie did. Amanda Rossa. Hello, Amanda. Can we hear from Amanda? Are you on the call on the session? Yes. Oh, there is an Amanda. Here you go. Okay. Hello, Amanda. Hello. Congratulations. So where are you from, Amanda? What company?
Alliance Airlines.
Alliance Airlines. Hello. And welcome. And thank you for being on the webinar. And congratulations, Amanda. So as I mentioned before, I'm not sure if you were listening before or not, you and the team decide on any team building activity of your choice, book it, send us the proof of you've booked it or paid for it, whatever. We either send pay directly the vendor, or you guys as a reimbursement. However, you can get in touch with us, and whatever is convenient for you, we'll make it work. You are welcome. So here we go. This sort of concludes our business on this session. A huge thank you to the panel, Michelle and Sally. I know how busy individuals they are, like everybody else on the call, of course. So I really appreciate taking the time and sharing your experiences. Clearly, that's very, very important. When you really share your experiences, this is what this is all about. It's about sharing experiences, not about preaching or giving people lectures. So we really appreciate your time, and everybody that joined. Thank you for your feedback. There was a couple of people, Liz, and the second name, I could not read it properly. There was Liz and someone else that most of the questions came from. I'm immensely grateful, guys. Where are you guys from, by the way? Liz, no, sorry, I knew where Liz from. The other person, are you still on the call? You've asked a lot of great questions. I really want to acknowledge that. Where you're from? Yes. What's the name there? I'm sorry. Can you zoom on that, Ed? Ah, amazing. Yes. Thank you very much for your amazing questions and your contribution. Yes. YWCA. It's a great organization. Thank you so much, man. Guys, thank you very much. This concludes our business. Have an awesome day, and we'll talk to you on the next session. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, everyone.